October 2nd, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. This is the 2000 tick chart. Go down in the descriptions below. You can see where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. And there was only probably two pieces of economic data that came out today that may have really moved the markets. One was at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard, which is about right here. That was when the ISM Manufacturing PMI came out. And then around 8 o'clock Pacific Standard, this is right about where Jerome Powell came out and started speaking. There were actually several Fed chiefs that came out, well, Fed presidents that came out and started giving their commentary. So today overall was pretty choppy. It wasn't the easiest, most obvious trading, in my opinion. And it looked like it was just kind of a sell-off, fell into a range, then it kind of sold off again and then fell into another range. But you could argue that the overall price action, at least during regular trading hours, is probably contained within this, I would say, about 40-point range from about 43.35 to about, I don't know, 42.95. But within that, there was some swings and it was kind of choppy at times. As I said, overall, I didn't think the trading was super obvious today. It was a little more challenging for me, and I'm going to get into the trades now. I took a total of 4 trades. I ended up winning on 3 and losing on 1, and I'm going to kind of go into it right now. So this is the pre-market. Pre-market looks like it was within its own little range right here. Then, for whatever reason, in the twilight hours, things started selling off. It sold off, pretty much made it all the way to the bottom. Well, it was at the bottom, and when right before it opened, it was kind of rallying back up. Prices originally looked like it was going to just stay in this range formed by the pre-market. It was kind of rallying up a bit. I didn't see any good entries here. Technically, there's a double top here. Let me actually just do this. So originally, prices looked like they were kind of coming down in this tight yellow channel, but I don't trade the pre-market, so I didn't really wasn't around to really take any trades or look for any clean setups. Then when prices opened, I found that there was potentially this green channel, but even then, and I saw a potential tighter trading range here, but actually it didn't really come in and matter too much, so I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this guy. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that one. I meant to delete this guy. Okay, I'll draw back the other range in a moment. So prices continue chopping up. This is very hard to trade because it's very, very tight. So even if you found a second entry long or short, it's hard to trust because these candles are it's just very, very small deliberate moves. You would have to look at a higher time frame to see and look for another trade. But here I just kind of avoided this. Prices were moving up and it kind of hit this bottom part. And this is actually where I took my first trade. It was in the middle of congestion though. And I'm not saying this is the best trade, but it was something I did take. What I saw was a new high. I saw first entry long, pulls back. Technically, you have a second entry long here. But the way I saw it was, this is actually a new high. I saw this as one leg. And when this first big green bar formed, I saw this as first entry long, pull back. And right here, it was creating a second entry long. So I didn't jump in right away, but I did notice that prices seem to be respecting this 43.2350 level after 4 attempts to try to break down. And I also saw that there was potentially this green channel coming up. It fit the top pretty nicely, and the bottom was a third confirmation. So technically here, depending on how you drew it, it looked like it's breaking out. And I'm thinking it's tested this 4 times, and it tried once. It only made 1 tick below. And I thought there was 1 leg down, push up, and then this is getting ready for a second leg up. So here, as this was forming, I jumped in right here. It is a little early. Then it flashed up and it was able to get out. So in hindsight, I was thinking, okay, maybe the EMA is holding, but this trade, for all intents, wasn't the safest. But I did like that this was a very small risk for this candle because my stop was actually just 1 tick below this guy. So it was kind of a riskier trade, but it turned out it worked in my favor. I'm not saying that I would always take that trade, but something told me like it looks like it is pushing back up. So I took that kind of a hunch trade on top of what I did see. Then prices started falling, goes into this smaller channel, but there's no clean setup, hops around in this range, breaks out of this range, I think I see one leg down, pull up, and I'm looking for a second leg. So it kind of completed the second measured move now. I'm watching carefully for any kind of setup. Technically, you could say there's a new high here. The first entry long pushes up. I'm looking for ideally a break above for the second entry long if I wanted to go long, but I wasn't sure what really was going to transpire and if I would trust that second entry long. Comes up. Here, technically, you have a second entry long, and it's kind of right on the EMA. I didn't take it though, just I didn't feel that good about it. Prices then move up, breaks out, comes back up again. I'm just watching carefully. So at this point, I didn't mean to do that. At this point, I did think I'm potentially in some kind of trading range from here, something that looks like this. Maybe this larger trading range. So then I also saw a new high, kind of new high breaks down, and then I reset the count here, second new high, comes down. I saw a first entry long, pulls back. I saw a potential second entry long, but I also saw this as a potential higher low. So it's like a new high, first entry long, second entry long. There's a higher low right here. I decided that this higher low was good enough for me to take a trade. And so I actually entered right here, as you can see, right at the highs of this candle, because I thought, okay, I didn't have this green channel drawn yet. I did have it as a potential trend line coming down. I thought there was potential resistance, but I also failed to really consider that I might be at the top of this potential trading range. And as you can see, it ends up kind of being a higher low trap because as you can see, I entered probably where other people didn't consider as well. And then it started flowing down. I got stopped out. I was also thinking that, this is bouncing off this orange channel. This closed below the EMA, so I should have taken that into consideration. And in hindsight, I really should just stayed out of this trade because it's looking very congested. Prices then continue moving. It falls into what I think is the green channel. I don't see any clean entries. I do see a second entry short here as a new low, first entry short, second entry short. This is a pretty good signal bar. The thing I don't like about this is even though there's a second entry short, it's a good signal bar, it's an inside bar of this green one because it didn't quite tick one tick below. So that gives me pause. And then the second thing is it's on top of the EMA, even though the EMA is kind of flattening out. And it just came from an overshoot. So it could be pushing back into this range, but this is a kind of a pretty strong push out. And if I wanted to scalp, I'm kind of running into the potential EMA, which may or may not come into play. Plus, I did think there was a yellow channel coming up. So my fear was if I took a short here, it bounced off of somewhere here and I might lose. So I had to pass on that, but if I were more aggressive, I'm thinking, yes, it might be trying to test the lows of this green channel. And as you can see, it would have worked out, but of course you don't know that at the time. Prices then chopped around. So let me extend this range out further. So it looks something like this now. Now, I'm not too sure where the bottom was because it is making higher lows every time. So I was giving more respect to the top of the range as opposed to the bottom. And I wouldn't really worry about the bottom of the range until price action comes down. But keeping in mind that, prices are somewhat respecting some kind of vague resistance up here, but not consistently because you saw a breakout here and then here another breakout. I was a little bit more careful treating it as a range play because, it hits the top, you sell at the top and you buy back the bottom. But price action is also telling me, look, the buyers are coming in and they're getting stronger every time because you're making higher lows every big swing. So I was just a little more careful and a little more cautious. Price action then continues. It falls into the green channel, comes down. And this is actually where I take my third trade. I saw this as a new high. I saw first entry long, comes all the way down. This is your second entry long. Here, the second entry long looks like it just came above the EMA and it flashes right back down. So I was thinking, okay, maybe if this really is a range, it might be coming back down to touch this side because I just mentioned that it was making higher lows every time. But when this one started coming in and it broke below, I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of pushing back down to potential bottom here, or ideally all the way down to the bottom of the blue line here. So when I flashed up and this really came in strong, I thought, okay, there's a potential trade here. And I actually waited a little bit longer than I should have because the entry would have been actually one tick below here. My concern was this is a pretty big candle. My risk is huge. But when I saw these two candles form, I'm thinking, okay, price is coming back down. So I actually was thinking putting one tick below, but I ended up putting one tick below the original signal bar. So it's this tiny little purple candle you can see right here. So it got filled, but I also think, the entry was a little late. Maybe I should have passed or looked for a confirmation lower high, which is setting up right here. You have a lower high and you have a second entry short, new low here, first entry short, pulls back, creates a second entry short. So maybe over here would have been a safer entry, one tick below here, which would have saved me a few ticks and let me get out a little sooner. But unfortunately, I was already in the trade, so I just had to kind of play it out and see how it would play out, because this lower high and failed second entry, not this lower high, is kind of confirming the setup. So this is a potential entry, but I was already in this trade already. Then I see a failed second entry long, so new high, first entry long, second entry long, and then it looks like it's about to fail because technically it hasn't failed yet. Then here it definitely fails. So whether you want to say this is where the failure occurs or not, but it is kind of running into a potential support. So it's a good signal bar because this is a signal bar. It looks like it is coming back down. It broke out of this orange channel, made one attempt up, pull back, made a second attempt up, failed. So I'm still thinking it wants to test the lows of this green channel coming down. It broke up. It tried to push up two more times and also try to find the high of this orange. And so maybe it's actually going to come back down to the low of this blue range. So that gave me a little more confidence to just kind of hang in there and not try to just jump out, break even, or take a small loss. And if you're wondering, my stop was actually way up here, which is not a very good favorable risk reward. So as I said, this trade should have been passed. And then I see a lower high here, and then it starts actually finally working in my favor, and I was able to get out here. When I saw this, I was thinking, I might be looking into this too closely, because I just want to point out that this lower high looked like it was a trap for the longs, because it trapped everybody by one tick and then flashed down and engulfed this entire candle. But as I was saying, when I looked back and I saw this price action, I'm thinking I see a failed second entry long, a lower high, second entry short, failed second entry long, lower high. I think I was reading too much into the noise. It's the same thing as if you're just looking for second entries and just marking them and thinking there's trades. Yes, that's true. There's probably a ton of second entries in here, especially in these choppy areas, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're high probability. In context, they're probably just noise. And I was looking back and I'm thinking, this is definitely probably one of those instances where I should have just stayed out of it, because even though I survived this trade, this failed second entry long, going short right here and getting out here, this is having to sit through this and having the trade not work out kind of the way you think it should right away or pretty shortly after you enter. This is just adding extra mental anguish and probably distracting. So this is, in hindsight, I think I was looking in too closely, and I should have just kind of avoid things like this where it's not clear, and I might be pushing too hard to almost make the pattern or make the price action fit what I want it to fit visually so I could justify a trade. And that's kind of definitely a mental thing that I have to work on. I'm sure a lot of people also feel the same way, because you're trying to almost the goal should be taking good trades. And in this instance, it felt like my goal was to take a trade and then justify it by thinking I saw something. And that's definitely not the way to go. So then prices moved down. It almost hits the other side, pretty close. And I saw a failed second entry short here. So first entry short, second entry short, failure. So this failed second entry short, I thought, okay, this is a potential move coming out of this bounce here. Maybe it wasn't a full bounce, but this is a pretty good signal bar. But I wasn't ready to take this trade, and I was just coming off the idea like, hey, I might be forcing things. So just marked it for myself. And prices continue moving. So first entry long, second entry long, but you're below the EMA. Things are starting to trend down. I'm not really 100% sure of what's happening, so I had to just sit on my hands and wait. Prices keep continuing up. You do have a first entry short. This could be one leg. You have a second entry short, but there's no indication at this, when you see this candle, to get ready to take a short. Then when this flashes down, I felt the trade was too late. Bounces off the EMA. You do have a lower high, and then it continues down. So I do draw this channel coming up, and I'm thinking, okay, there might be some kind of third confirmation. You could argue as a first, second, and third confirmation, but I just saw it as a second touch, and I was just waiting. I don't see anything that I like particularly. It does look like it's in this bigger green channel at the moment. It falls into this consolidation area. Let me just drag this range over a little bit. Things are just consolidating. It's getting very choppy. It breaks up, almost touches the other side, comes back down. It's just noisy here. This is just like, stay away. You're not skilled enough to trade this. So that's what I did. I just stayed away. It falls down, falls into what I think is this lower channel coming down. I had a pretty good confirmation. I was playing with this for a while, thinking maybe there's a tighter channel here. But even then, I couldn't find any good justification to take a trade. There's a consolidation area here. Keeps going down. It looks like it fits this green channel pretty well. There's a consolidation. I was wondering if it's going to break, but if it breaks, it's more of a horizontal break and not because of an impulsive breakout because buyers are coming in. It's more of a struggle that outlasted the downtrend. And it keeps going down, chops around. I see this is one leg up and it's starting the second leg. So I'm wondering if prices are going to get back up to here. I don't see any good setups. It's unfortunate because this is a very big move down. And I was watching the EMA for any potential price action that gets the EMA to quickly take a short. But by the time that happens, you're kind of in this area. And in this area, these candles are just too side by side for me to feel comfortable taking any kind of entry. And then breaks down, it comes back up. But this time it breaks through the EMA. So there's definitely nothing I think I could take. Prices then continue. I think I see a top resistance here. And at the time, I was thinking there's a larger range. I ended up drawing it down here eventually, but it was kind of higher up here at one point. But even then, the bottom didn't fit really nicely. It was making lower lows and lower highs. But I didn't see any good clean setups. Prices then continue moving down. Now it's at the bottom now. And I'm wondering, okay, could this be a failed breakout of prices coming back in? Pops around, keeps going. You do have second entries, as I mentioned before. There's kind of like these second entry shorts, second entry longs, but I wasn't sure and confident in my read today to be, well, confident that I wasn't just looking too closely and it was getting chopped up in the noise. So I did drag this one down to about right here, thinking this is maybe a failed breakout. Chops in here. This is actually where I take my last trade of the day. I was sitting for most of the day after the, 3 trades. This is my 4th trade. I saw this as a new low. I saw it as a first entry short, pull back, second entry short. The second entry short also fails right here. And I also saw this as a new high. Even though this is a double top, I count as a first entry long, and I saw this as a second entry long. This candle, so this is actually a more aggressive trade with a potential top coming in right here because it looks like it tried twice and it couldn't quite break through. And so I saw this as a break of this green channel. And I saw, okay, it made one push up, it pulled back, and I thought this was setting up for a second entry long. But in hindsight, yes, this is a small risk because this is only 4 ticks, 1 point. But I had a lot of reasons not to take this trade because it's a break and already made a new high. And this is a bullish bar, but it didn't close bullish. The only thing going for me is it's a small risk, and I thought I saw 2 key entry setups. The first entry short, second entry short failure off this candle, and a first entry long, second entry long. So I actually entered, but I have a lot more reasons not to enter because there is a potential resistance here because at one time I was thinking my channel might be something like this. And so even this one that I'm kind of hovering around, it's telling me that I'm coming into resistance. So there's more reasons not to take this trade as against the reasons that I did take the trade. So this is actually a lucky to get out with the skin of my teeth trade. And as you can see, I went for 1 point, but had I stayed longer for 2 or more, I likely would have gotten stopped out by one of these candles. Definitely by this red candle, I would have gotten stopped out. It bounces, so I'm thinking, okay, at least I think I have discovered a up green channel. I saw a second entry short here that failed. It's a new low. The first entry short, second entry short. It confirmed with third touch this band coming up. And when it closed and closed very bullish, I thought, okay, EMA looks like it's starting to hold. Third confirmation, but it seems too late because there's not enough room to scalp out. Yet, remember back here, I thought there was enough reasons to take a trade. So this is kind of contradictory to my thinking. It's definitely a bad habit I need to hammer out because this is more off of wishy-washy gut feel, which isn't to be trusted yet because I haven't seen enough price action. And then here, this is an even better bar, but it is a failure. So this had more reason to take a trade than this one, yet I didn't take this trade. Then it breaks out. It looks like it's entering the pre-market low, which is formed here, but I'm not sure if it's going to break through or it's going to act as a resistance. Here it acts like a resistance. It breaks down below, hops around, kind of floats back up. I draw this short and green trend channel going up. It comes back. It looks like it's falling into this range again, but this is just very, very, I would say, risky. Prices then continue. It breaks, and it comes back down on this downward green channel. I don't see anything that I particularly like. It falls into this noisy little area, smaller little range here. Comes down. It breaks out of this green channel, makes a new low. So I'm thinking the downtrend has played out. Coincidentally, it lands pretty nicely at the bottom of this big blue range. So I'm thinking it went to the highs, to the lows, to the highs, broke out, came back down. But before I take a long, it just came from a failed breakout. So I'm thinking it could potentially create a matching symmetrical one down here. So I was just extra cautious. Chops around, it actually pushes up, and it falls into what I believe now is a smaller overlapping trading range. Chops around, it confirms there's some kind of support down here by two trading ranges, this one right here as well as the big one. Technically, I do see a big visual first entry long, second entry long, but I wasn't ready to take a trade because I did see it, but I wasn't too sure about it. This big flash down surprised me. I wasn't sure what happened there. Then I do see a second entry long here. It's a new high. The first entry long, it's confirming this, but by the time this candle forms, it's already too late. So this signal bar, when I first saw it, doesn't give me really any good indication to get a trade ready other than it's bouncing off this potential support, but that's not good enough to take a trade. And when this candle triggers and forms and confirms your second entry long, it's definitely too late to try to take a trade because you have no room to scalp out. You could try to put your entry one tick above this signal bar and hope it comes back to pick you up. But as I said, even then, the signal bar wasn't very confident. You wanted to close green and at least higher. Prices then continue moving. I did see a second entry long that looks like it's hidden because you have a new high here. You have a definite first entry long here. But then as you can see, it broke below, and on this candle, it broke back above. So I saw it as a first entry long. Then on the life of this candle, it created that second entry long that was hidden. And maybe there's a possible trade here because I thought it's bouncing off of this trend channel coming up, and the EMA is continuing to hold. And as you can see, it would have flashed up. It looks like it would have worked. And definitely you don't want to wait till this one closes because you're reaching the top of this resistance again. So this would have been more of a hunch play. And it's kind of getting late in the day that I decided like I just don't want to even deal with that. I was lucky to get 3 winning trades today to factor out and wash away the one red trade. So I didn't want to push my luck, especially since my last trade, I looked back in hindsight and it was pretty iffy. So then prices continue chopping, goes into this range. It tries to make it back into this yellow channel, and it does, but it wasn't a very strong push in. So it's still chopping around, and then it kind of moves into the close. So this is the last 10 minutes where you see a lot of price actions, a lot of bars printing, and it's hard to trust and trade something like this. So I usually avoid it unless I'm already in a trade or there's something undeniably great about that setup. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen, so I just had to sit and wait. And that's kind of how I saw the charts today. It was a little confusing. I will admit I was getting a little sloppy, especially after my third trade right around here. I was thinking, I'm looking too close. I needed to zoom out a little bit more, see the overall context, because I think for sure my read, especially today and pretty much last week, had been very tough for me to try to get any good trades. And overall price action wasn't as obvious. There were a few challenging days. Today I thought was kind of challenging as well. It wasn't as challenging as previous like last week, there were a couple of days where it was just hard for me to figure out. And today it wasn't quite like that, but it wasn't very obvious either. So hopefully that was helpful.